And so, man, just to encourage you, being here, you don't always feel the magic, and you will today because I'm speaking, right? But no, but you don't always feel the magic every week, but it's consistently doing the right thing, committing to being a part of a group of brothers that are going to help you grow in your faith. And so just thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I wanted to talk for a few minutes. Honestly, it's less of a message, and I'm a firm believer that the conversation around the tables is going to be a whole lot better than one guy talking to a group of us. And so I don't plan to talk very long today. But I wanted to, I had this thought. Bill Reinhardt, actually, shout out to Bill, who's at a funeral right now. He and I met yesterday morning. We're talking about a few things, and he kind of spurred this idea in me that's I can't seem to break away. And this idea of catch and release. And so I went fishing. So any of you guys fish much? Are any of you guys into that? I'm not a big fisherman. But my wife's cousin owns a charter boat in Key West, and he used to be a captain. Now he owns the boat. I think he's got a couple of them, and he's been begging us for years, come on down, I'll let you fish for free, I want to take you out. And so finally this year we took our kids down to Key West, and we fished with him, which, by the way, taking young children to Key West is a whole nother experience. I know we're recording, but I'll tell you this because it's awful but funny. But my 12-year-old son came to me and he was like, "Dad, did you see that T-shirt?" And I was hoping he hadn't seen the same one that I saw. And I was like, "No, I'm not. What are you talking about?" He said, "That one, I don't know what it means. It says, 'I'm not gay, but $20 is $20. What does that mean, Dad?" And I was like, "Oh gosh, please forget that you ever heard that." So Key West was interesting with the kids, but we went fishing, and we were fishing for food, right? We were fishing for mahi and snapper, and so that was our stated goal going out in the boat. And so we went to the reef, and each of these fish have a certain slot that you have to get them in, or size that they have to be, minimum size anyways, in order to keep them. And so for us, every fish that didn't meet that requirement was a disappointment. We did not come to catch and release fish. We came to fill up our freezer, which we have done, and any of you are welcome. We've got mahi for weeks in the freezer, and it was awesome. But started thinking about this idea of catch and release. And the way it came up yesterday with Bill, he reminded me of that scene from Same Kind of Different as Me. I don't know if you guys saw the movie when we did at the movie series. I wrote down the quote because I wanted to read it to you. It's so powerful, and I think it's just connected to what I want to share with you. So this is, if you haven't seen the movie, the book, I read the book before I saw the movie. It's a lot better, always is. The book is amazing if you haven't read it. But Ron Hall is this wealthy purveyor of art. I think he's he sells art, but he gets kind of brought into serving homeless through his wife and her heart to serve him. And they've got this guy named Denver. His name, I think, was it Suicide?
Yeah. What movie is it?
Same Kind of Different as Me. It was Suicide prior to them actually learning his real name, is all he was known by. Super rough character. And Ron Hall's trying to break through. He's trying to connect with him. And they have this conversation around lunch. And so I'm going to read this little excerpt. Take a minute. This is Denver talking. He says, "I heard that when white folks go fishing, they do something called catch and release." "Catch and release?" I nodded solemnly, suddenly nervous and curious. "That really bothers me," Denver went on. "I just can't figure it out. Because when colored folks go, forgive my obviously very dated language here, but when colored folks go fishing, we're really proud of what we catch, and we take it and show it off to everybody that'll look. Then we eat what we catch. In other words, we use it to sustain us. So it really bothers me that white folks would go to all the trouble to catch a fish. When they done caught it, they just throw it back in the water." He paused again, and the silence between us stretched a full minute. Then, "Did you hear what I said?" I nodded, afraid to speak, afraid to offend. Denver looked away, searching the blue autumn sky, and then locked onto me again with that drill bit start. "So, Mr. Ron, it occurred to me, if you is fishing for a friend you just going to catch and release, then I ain't got no desire to be your friend." I returned Denver's gaze with what I hoped was a receptive expression and hung on. Suddenly his eyes gentled and he spoke more softly than before. "But if you is looking for a real friend, then I'll be one forever." And man, that scene was just so powerful to me. The idea and the thought that part of what had hardened this guy who had had such a crazy experience up to that point to opening up to a relationship is he just assumed that he was in it for a catch and release kind of a deal, to connect with somebody and go. And if I'm just being real honest with you, the thing that's heavy on my heart, what I want to share with you, I hope it'll be encouraging, but more so I hope it'll be moving and motivating for you, because I want to transition some of the burden that I feel to you guys. And I may share some of this tomorrow night at Men's Wednesday as well, but depending on what Brian wants me to do. But Jesus obviously has called us to be fishers of men. And I want to actually go back and read this, but my biggest fear as a church right now is that we would be the kind of church that's a catch and release church, where people come, and I've been hearing some really cool stories, Neil, just some great stories of people who are brand new to the church, been coming for a few months, and you guys are doing what I'm hoping everybody will get a chance to do, which is to experience community, to really meet people. This not just be a place that you come and experience on the weekend, but you've been on hikes, some of you, and you've connected in small group, and you're really able to grow in your faith because of that relationship. And so I want to read a passage from Luke chapter 5 will be kind of our scripture for the day, and then really just comment on it a little bit, and then I want to push us to the tables to have some conversation around what God might be saying to each of us through it. But Luke chapter 5, it's when Jesus initially called his disciples, some of his disciples to come, but it's a really fascinating story as you look into some of the details. I'm just going to read it and comment along the way. One day as Jesus was preaching on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, great crowds pressed in on him to listen to the word of God. He noticed 2 empty boats at the water's edge, for the fishermen had left them and were washing their nets. Stepping into one of the boats, Jesus asked Simon, its owner, to push it out onto the water. I love that. Jesus didn't actually ask him to borrow the boat. He just got in it and said, hey, can you stop doing whatever you're doing and push me out on the water? And I think it's a pretty critical part of this story, though, that Jesus actually steps in and borrows Simon's boat. And it makes me wonder, and I'll kind of maybe unpack this in a little bit, but how often Jesus just wants to use something that we have for a greater good, and how often are we willing to let Jesus use what we have? It didn't look like Simon had much of an option in this particular case, because he just got in the boat, but he says, will you push it out into the water? So he sat in the boat and taught the crowds from there. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, now go out where it is deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish. Master, Simon replied, we've worked hard all night last night, didn't catch a thing, but if you say so, I'll let the nets down again. And this time their nets were so full of fish that they began to tear. A shout for help brought their partners in the other boat, and soon both boats were filled with fish and on the verge of sinking. Side note, when Jesus does want to borrow some of your stuff, just recognize that he has the ability to bless you way more than if you're to hang on to your stuff and have a tight fist on the things that God has given us. And that's just kind of a side note. It's amazing to me that he borrows the boat because Jesus wants to spread the gospel and share with more people. And then, rather than just returning it as he found it, he said, hey, I actually want to return it a lot better than I found it. And so he takes him, and they have this massive catch of fish. Boats are on the verge of sinking. It says, when Simon Peter realized what had happened, he fell to his knees before Jesus and said, oh Lord, please leave me. I'm such a sinful man. I don't know if you guys can relate to that. I definitely can. When God does something beyond what I think I deserve, it kind of highlights the fact that I don't deserve it. And so he's just got this reaction to Jesus of, oh my gosh, and falls to his knees, and I don't deserve this. I'm in the presence of something holy. Sometimes that reminds you of where we're not. But Jesus, it says, for he was awestruck by the number of fish that they had caught, as were the others with him. His partners, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, were also amazed. Jesus replied to Simon, don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be fishing for people. And as soon as they landed, they left everything, including that massive, life-altering haul of fish. They leave it all and follow Jesus. And so just obviously it's a famous passage of Scripture. It's that moment where Jesus says, hey, you've been fishing for your livelihood. You've been fishing for business. You've been fishing for food. I'm gonna turn you into a fisher of man. And I believe that same call to those disciples is the same call that he's given us, to be fishers of men. And so, amazing scene. He borrows the boat. He needs to preach to the crowd. And I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to encourage you that when Jesus asks asked to borrow something from you, it's probably best that you say yes. Just thinking about for these guys. I mean, it turned into, I don't know what they did with the fish. I'd love to kind of ask that question one day. Like, is that kind of what allowed them to leave? They'd caught enough fish that they could, like they had security, they could sell it all and kind of, well, I don't know how that all worked out, but he blessed them in a tremendous way. And I wonder how often God just wants our time. He just wants us to be willing to be open-handed with the time that we have. And again, for the purpose of him getting glory, him preaching the gospel, him sharing the good news. I wonder what God is asking us, and that may be one of the questions that we throw to the table. What's God asking you to just give him? Is it your time? It could be your business. Those of you that have that, being open. I was so excited, the Leadership Summit this past week. Did any of you guys get a chance to go to that? Okay, a couple of you. I suspected that some of you did, which is why I didn't just steal one of their messages and preach that, because there were so many good messages that I'm still working to apply. But seeing people go, hey, I want to open up my business. Say, God, it's yours. You're welcome to step onto the boat. You're welcome to use this as a platform to reach people if you want to. Of course, our resources, finances is an easy one to think about. But then even our leadership, and that's really where I want to kind of focus this. The influence that we have, are we the kind of people that are willing to go, Jesus, step on the boat. I'm willing to use my influence, my leadership, my resources so that you can do whatever you want to do. And so that would be a huge question. Then he blesses the heck out of them, which is amazing. Kind of like, oh, you're a fisherman. Well, let's go, let me go kind of pay you back for this and drop your boat. And it just amazing. They drop to their knees. Jesus was a carpenter. I imagine if some of them are kind of like, when he says, let's go fish a little bit more, they're like, dude, why don't you stay in your lane? Like, you can build stuff. You can help me repair the nets even maybe, but stay in your lane. And like they have this aha moment where they realize, this is God. This is God. This is supernatural. This is a miracle. We've experienced supernatural miracle. Was anybody at a healing service on this past Wednesday? So cool, just talking in the foyer. I met 4 people this weekend, and I haven't heard any of the big, I say that big, as if they aren't all huge. I haven't heard of the cancer. I don't have cancer. Usually those stories come in a little bit later. I did meet like 3 or 4 people at the service who had struggled with infertility for years, one of them for 11 years, and she's pregnant with twins right now, that got pregnant like 2 weeks after the healing service. I don't know if you guys remember the one in February or March, but they talked about that. So anyway, saw some cool things, and these guys have a similar reaction, like jaws on the floor. Oh my gosh, Jesus just did something that's unexplainable, miraculous, amazing deal. And then he turns it all on them in a sense and kind of uses all of that to help them discover why they really exist, why they're really on planet Earth. You're now going to become fishers of men. And we know that if we were sitting with these guys today and they were telling us about their lives, they would point back to this moment as a point that changed everything for them. And we now know them, like how many churches are named after St. Peter or James or all of these incredible guys, that their lives were changed in this moment where Jesus says, you guys are fishers of men. And I just want to tell you, that's what we're called to as a church. We're called to reach people, to be fishers of men. And can I tell you, the boat is full right now. Like, it has been an amazing season. We moved into this building and on Easter Sunday, and we had hoped and prayed. I'm telling you, as a leader, super insecure at times about, what are we doing? Is this, are we reaching too far? Are we doing too much here? But we did this. We kind of opened up the building, and we have seen people flooding into this place. I can't even describe it. We're up about 25 to 30% on any given weekend at this campus. And check this out, we're up at most every other campus as well. So I wondered if some people are coming from other campuses, and I think there's a little bit of that, but we're in one of these seasons where people are coming in droves every single weekend. I love hanging out in the foyer. And on Saturday nights, by the way, if you haven't checked that out yet, we kind of wanted to open up some space and really encourage the family feel, people to connect, get to know each other. So we started doing Saturday nights food trucks and missions dinners and stuff afterwards, and seen a tremendous amount of growth on Saturday nights. My selfish goal was that we'd see people come out of the Sunday morning services so that we wouldn't have to go to 3 services too soon. And Sunday morning's grown as well. And so it's great. People are coming. I think we're going to hang on to 2 services for a little bit as we jump into the fall. But the reality is we haven't even hit what historically are the big growth seasons of the church. Like in the 31-year history of the church, January and September are the 2 months that we see spikes in attendance. And I think it's because school's getting back in and people are kind of getting into their new rhythms. And so, you know, I'm super excited and looking forward to what God's going to do. But if I'm being really transparent with you, like the boat's full of fish and I'm horrified. Like I'm actually scared because I don't want to be a catch and release church. And I know that historically, if people don't get connected into groups like this within about 3 to 6 months, in fact, who was, you were, tell me your first name again? Scott. You came for a little bit. You guys didn't seem to get connected for whatever reason. And then, you know, life happens. That story repeats so many times. And typically, if they don't get connected into a group of other believers that they can grow with and be friends with, or a serve team, or both, it's usually about 3 to 6 months before life just starts kind of pulling you back into your old rhythms and routines. And some people leave Seacoast and go to other churches, and we bless them. That's awesome. Those people I don't lay up at night thinking about those people, because they're somewhere that they're growing and they're encouraging, and there's some great churches around here. But it's the people that just kind of tail off that really I lay up and thinking about. Like how can we make sure that we aren't catching and releasing, that they're not coming here on the weekend, having some experience with God, which is great, but then ultimately kind of falling back into their sort of prior way of life. And so essentially what that means is now is the time. Now is like harvest time. You know, you hear all the time, Jesus said, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Like we are in a season right now where it is harvest time. Any of you have any background in farming? I don't know if anybody does. So McLean does. Farmers, like as pastors, we get super excited about the harvest. Like pastors will do entire messages about the harvest is coming, the harvest is coming. Farmers will tell you that's like the hardest working time of the year, because if you don't reap the harvest, it dies, right? If you don't get it off of the trees, if you don't get it out of the fields in a certain amount of time, it all goes to waste. It dies. You know, it gets eaten by the wild animals, or it dies. And so I feel like we are in harvest time, and I don't say that as in like, yay, I am excited. It's what we're called to do. But I say it as in help. Like we are in a season of harvest. And at Seacoast, like I just laid out some of our objectives to our staff. It's just priorities, focus for this coming year. And the number one thing that I'm thinking about, that I'm calling our staff to think about, is this idea of how do we engage and how do we connect people in the harvest. Right now, our model is small groups. Just so you know, I'm not married to small groups, never have been. We're married to helping people connect. That seems to be a vehicle, and I love small groups. I'm not saying that because we're thinking about doing something different. I'm saying that because if you've got a better idea, then let's talk about it. But the idea is that we help people get into meaningful relationships where they can grow in their relationship with God, grow in their relationship with others. And I've never seen it happen better than when it does around tables like this. And the goal has never been small groups. The goal has been relationships. And so it's an even better when you guys are doing what you're talking about, McLean, and serving together at a conference or grabbing a meal together outside of here. This is kind of a catalyst, a starting place. But man, our focus is connecting people. And I just want to share, and I may be oversharing, but just some data. We've worked with an organization called Mortarstone, I think is what it's called. And they're helping us. We've always had data. You guys fill out cards or check your kids in. We've always had a lot of data at our disposal, but they're really helping us interpret and translate some of this. I won't bore you, I promise, with this. I'll do this real briefly, but then I'm going to kick it back to the tables. But we're measuring who's coming in and what's happening with them. Let's go all the way back. Well, I'll start with June of this year. Just at the West Campus, we had 108 brand new people come to the Seacoast West campus just in the month of June. In the month of June, we had 128 people come to the Somerville campus, which is amazing. Let's go back to August of last year because we have some historical data there. August of last year, across our entire church, just in the month of August, we had 878 people show up for the very first time to Seacoast Church. Is that not like, holy cow, like that is just jarring, like amazing to think about. And so we've kind of, sounds terrible, but tracked the progress of those 878 people. And here's what I know about those 870. I'm not going to go through all that I know about it, but what I do know is that of the 878 people that came in August, less than 5% of them have been to Inside Track. I'm not sharing that as a pat on the back, by the way. That's not good. Something's not working there in terms of taking your steps and come to the church and getting to the Inside Track. I know that less than 15% of them are in a small group, and less than 15% of them are serving anywhere. And there's a whole lot more our team's looked at and studying and understanding this stuff. But just those three numbers alone communicate to me that, man, we have got to be more trustworthy with the harvest of people that God's sending. I know not 100%. My goal's not even 100% because I know that this is the kind of church that people are going to come. They're going to be anonymous for a while. Some people just prefer that. That's okay. But we can do a lot better than 15% of people connected in small groups. We can do a lot better than 15% of people serving on the Dream Team. And I say that in a season where all those numbers look really good in terms of numbers of people in small groups, numbers of people serving. It's at all-time highs. But when you track new people and their progress, what you're seeing is way more aren't than are getting connected. And so our plan, we've got lots of plans and got teams that are working on different things, but we're going to do an alignment series in September. Have any of you guys been around for an alignment series at Seacoast before and know what a small group alignment series, even what that's all about? Essentially, for 4 weeks, we're shortening it. 4 weeks, we're doing a series starting in mid-September called Welcome Home. We're going to do the series on the weekend. So each week will be a talk within that series, but then we're going to ask our small groups to also do this series as well. We're making it, we call it cart light. We don't want it to be a super cumbersome process, and so all of the materials which are still being shot and put together are going to be on Right Now Media, which is a resource that we have for our small group leaders that you can access it. So it'll be a simple, hey, let's watch this 10-minute video and here's some questions that we can talk through. But the idea is that we've got all of these new people, thousands of them right now, probably 1,500 to 2,000 just at this campus new from the summer, plus whoever comes in the fall, that we would encourage everybody. Let's do a group. Let's find ways to get people connected. And so my ask of you is to pray, some of you, about opening your home and leading one of those for 4 weeks to help us connect some of the new people. I'd love all of you to do that, but I know not everybody's in a season where they can. But that you would at least go, okay, Jesus, here's my boat. In what way are you trying to get on my boat right now and use my resources? And then, how can I join you in your mission to seek and to save the lost, to become fishers of men, to help serve people and connect people in this really critical time as a church. And so I feel like in some ways I came here to encourage you, but I also came here to ask you to help us, when I say catch and release, the metaphor totally breaks down. We're not looking to fillet them and put them in our freezer either. But man, I don't want people to slip through the cracks. And our team works really hard on that. Brian is one of the best leaders that we have in this church, and I know he deploys a lot of you to help us with that, following up on Connect cards and doing some of that stuff. But man, we're going to need a lot of people over the next month or two to be willing to go, hey, I'll try this out for a month. And my strategy, this is just how I've always led groups over the years, is I'm always looking from day one and communicating on day one that, hey, somebody in this circle is going to end up leading this group. We're here to start it. We're here to get to know you, but somebody in this circle is going to end up leading it. And then I'll find them, and it's easier for me to go start a new group, which is what Lisa and I are going to do during this alignment study, and then let somebody else take the group that's already gelled a little bit, already has connection, and run with it. And so that's what's going on. That's what we're doing. I don't want to be a catch and release church. And my hope and my prayer is that you guys, in some form or fashion, will all take some ownership, whether that's small, like on the weekends, just lingering a little bit, connecting. I'm telling you, I just hang out in the foyer, different spots every weekend. And I know people recognize me because I'm on the platform some, so that might be an unfair disadvantage or advantage, depending on what you want to say. But it's been just remarkable. My phone is full of new numbers, new people, and I'm just trying to, I'm carving out time in my schedule right now. I've asked my assistant Kathy to help me just leave windows where I can do lunches, do coffee. So I'm just all weekend long, hey, good to meet you. If I feel like there's a divine connection or some opportunity to get to know them better, it's, hey, can we grab lunch this week? Oh, wow, that would be awesome. I don't ever want people to think that we're a church where the pastors or the platform people are kind of hanging out in a green room and hiding out. I want to be available and accessible as much as I can, but I also know, just from a stewardship perspective, obviously I can't do this all on my own. Brian can't do this all on his own. We've got a great team, great leaders to step up and help us. And so that's my word, that's my ask. I did throw down some questions. I don't know how you guys usually work this, but I threw out a couple of questions. One, I thought would be fun for us to talk about at the tables is just to share about the first time that you showed up at Seacoast Church, or if the first time you showed up at church in a long time was somewhere other than Seacoast. Be fun to revisit some of that. What were you feeling? What was that experience like for you? What did you notice? And part of why I asked that question is because I want to remind myself all the time. To me, coming into this church is easy. It's like walking in my front door. But it wasn't always that way. I didn't always feel that way. And I know for the people who are walking in for the first time, it's not that experience. So that was the first question I was going to have you guys talk about. Number two, just a straightforward question. Do you envision yourself as a fisher of men? And what ways has God used you to help other people to see the hope of who He is? I know that can be an intimidating thought, but the reality is, if you're a follower of Christ, whether you've been a follower of Christ, which for Peter it was for 5 minutes when he took on that calling, and I think sometimes we complicate it. Well, you got to go through the growth track and the development plan and the discipleship deal, and I'm all for all of those things, but sometimes we overcomplicate it. Jesus, he didn't do anything with them except, hey, come follow me. Let's do this. So that's a question. And then third thought for you guys: Peter allowed Jesus to use us to use your boat, to use your resources today. And so those are three questions. Before we jump to the tables, any comments, questions, thoughts? Want me to get out of here?
We don't want to.
Josh, the data that you're talking about is coming from Connect cards. Is that correct?
Multiple entry, any way that somebody gives us their information. So these are people that have told us that they're here, either Connect cards or checking their children in for the first time, or giving, if somebody gives, and that's the first record that we have of them being here. But there are a whole lot more people that haven't given us any information, that are just coming and going. But those are just people that we have names, addresses, emails, all that on.
That was my point, because I see, we work as a host, and I see a lot of people that I don't recognize, and I don't see the Connect card doing what it could do.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. I think, so if you pull back the curtain a little bit, there's a lot of process and system stuff that I want us to almost assume that none of it's working, or not assume it's not working, but really dig into how we can grow, how we can learn. Bill brought a great idea to me yesterday, he called it the first 10 days, the first 10. And it was, when you give your life to Christ, we're going to create a 10-day devotional that basically takes you through very foundational stuff about following Christ, that we'll put on YouVersion, that we'll have as a little thing that we can give people. But so that's a piece. Obviously, getting from showing up and giving your life to Christ to inside track seems like a pretty big step right now that not a lot of people are taking. So finding ways to meet them where they're at and do. But then the Connect card, how are we doing with that? Are we highlighting it? Are we I think there's a lot we can learn on that. So trust me, I feel like that's why it's such a huge priority for us right now. But
I just want to make a couple of comments. One is, thank you for sharing with us, because that was awesome what you you did. I'll confess to one thing. Most pastors, when they're listening to another pastor talk, we're looking for our next sermon ideas, our next message ideas. So you gave me 3.
Okay, good.
Okay.
You go write them, make them better, and then give them back. Do it on the weekend.
You can listen to them. You know, but that's awesome. But the question you asked was the same one I had, and I would challenge the same, this group of men with the same thing. It's basically, are you a fisherman, or do you see yourself as a fisherman? I would declare that you are.
You are, yeah.
So then the question is, who are you fishing for? And there's a lot of implications along that, from a diversity and inclusion standpoint. And then the third one is, what are you fishing with? What's your bait? And what are you putting out there for people to hearken to? You know, that's going to make them want to be.
That's great.
Your catch. You know, so that's, you know, I'd love to hear some comments on that, you know, in terms of how we carry this message forward and be challenged by it in order to contribute to the kingdom. It's like you said, I thought it was awesome. You said when people leave here and go to another church, yay God, that's a win, you know, it's a kingdom win, and we're all for that. But, you know, what's the bigger picture? I mean, that's the biggest picture we can have, is to go out and be, you know, fishers of men, or to be like the Great Commission says, you know, go in and make disciples, you know,
Yeah.
baptizing everybody.
Well, and
Son, Holy Spirit.
And Brian, you've shared this, I'm sure, but we probably all have heard the stats. But when the man of the home, whether you're single, married, kids in the house, out of the house, but when the man of the home, what's the phrase? I love it.
Leads the family to God. Yeah.
Well, statistically, it's drastically more important. Maddie, close your ears. But it has much more influence when the man of the home leads his faith. They say kids will maybe identify with the faith of their mother, but they'll live the faith of their father. And it's something, it's a much better quote than that, but that they'll actually do. And so part of what you're fishing with, part of that is our lives, you know, is living, doing what you got. I'm preaching to the choir, recognize that. But doing what you guys are doing and taking time out of your lunch to grow in your faith and grow spiritually is huge. And so thanks for having me in, and I'll jump into the table. And
yeah, I was going to say, guys, I think in the past couple months we've been doing a lot of like room discussion. But what I've noticed that leads to is people like me and Brian and a couple others who like to talk a lot. We talk, and then other people maybe don't.
Right.
So can we do tables today so that maybe everybody gets a chance?
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Cool.
cool.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, thank you guys.